You know, when you're just casually scrolling or walking past a store and you see a stunning outfit and think, wow, that looks absolutely amazing. But if someone actually stopped and asked you why it looks so good, you might just draw a blank. Is it the color? The way the sleeves fall? The fabric? Well, welcome to this explainer on design analysis. Today, we're going to completely shift your perspective. We're going to take you from being a casual observer to a professional fashion analyst. We're going to learn the pro secret of not just looking at clothes, but actually reading them. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's exactly how we're going to break things down today. First, we'll talk about reading fashion like a pro. Second, the actual design analysis process. Third, we'll open up the designer's core toolkit. Fourth, we'll do a deep dive case study on an A-line curdy. And finally, we'll wrap up with some pro secrets and common beginner mistakes.
All right, part one, reading fashion like a pro.
So this idea of combining design elements and principles is literally the bedrock of everything a trained designer does. You really have to ask yourself, do you just look at a piece of clothing or do you actually read it? You see, an amateur looks at a piece and just says, oh, it's pretty or that's ugly. But a professional has to ask why it works. If you don't understand the why, you're basically just blindly copying someone else's work, which, let's be honest, isn't actually designing. But once you learn to analyze, it's a total game changer. You can self-correct your own mistakes, you can pick the exact right fit for a specific client's body, and you suddenly understand why a crazy new trend is actually working. Moving right along to part two, the design analysis process. Let's transition from high-level theory to the highly practical, step-by-step methodology that professionals use to decode any piece of fashion. You're going to want to burn this 6-step sequence into your memory. First step, you just observe the overall piece. Take it all in. Second, you identify the specific elements that are present. Third, you break the garment down into its individual parts, the neckline, the sleeves, the silhouette. Fourth, you compare those parts to see if they're actually in balance. Fifth, you figure out the overall visual effect they create together. And finally, the 6th step is to recreate. Notice how recreating or actually designing only happens at the very end. It only happens after you've achieved true understanding. Rushing to just copy a design without going through this process is literally the ultimate beginner's trap. Okay, part 3, the designer's core toolkit. Let's look at those visual elements. We're going to do a rapid-fire breakdown of the visual tools you need to know. And hey, don't just memorize these terms, really try to understand them. The absolute first thing your eye registers is the silhouette. Imagine you're in a room, you turn off all the lights, and you just look at the dark shadow cast by the garment. That outer boundary? That's your silhouette, and it is absolutely crucial. Because if the designer chooses the wrong silhouette for the wearer's body, it doesn't matter how gorgeous the fabric is or how intricate the embroidery is, the entire garment just fails instantly. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how often it trips beginners up. Shape versus form. They sound similar, but they're so different. Shape is completely flat. It's that 2D outline you see in a flat sketch on a piece of paper. Form, on the other hand, is the 3D reality. It's the actual volume that the fabric takes on when it's draped over a real, moving, 3-dimensional human body. So remember, you might sketch in shape, but you always have to design for the reality of form. Next up in the toolkit is balance. This is what ensures a garment never looks awkward or lopsided. Now, symmetrical balance is pretty easy to spot. Both sides are identical mirror images. But asymmetrical balance? Oh man, that is where true design skill shines. This is when the two sides of a garment are completely different, but the visual weight still feels perfectly equal. It's like a giant puzzle. For example, a really heavy pocket on one side might be perfectly balanced out by a strong contrasting color panel on the opposite shoulder. Finally, we're looking for harmony. Harmony is when every single choice, the color, the fabric, the print, the tiniest details all tell one unified story. Clashing is when those moods just totally fight each other. Imagine slapping some super delicate traditional floral embroidery onto a stiff, neon, sporty mesh fabric. Yuck, right? No way. It totally shatters the harmony. True harmony relies on having a single, strong point of emphasis and repeating rhythmic patterns, rather than just confusing the eye with way too much clutter. All right, let's put this into practice. Part 4, Case Study on the A-line curdy. Let's treat this section like you're getting an over-the-shoulder look at a master designer dissecting a really familiar piece of clothing. So we're looking at this soft, dusty pink curdy. The very first step, like we talked about, is finding that outer outline. The silhouette here is a very clear A-line flare. This gives us a foundational 2D shape that's basically triangular. It's narrow at the top and wide at the bottom. And that specific choice instantly gives the whole garment a really flowy, graceful, and feminine look.
And this brilliantly illustrates the power of proportion. Just look at the seams here. We have these vertical panel lines running all the way down the curdy. Vertical lines naturally force our eyes to travel up and down, which beautifully elongates the figure. But equally important is the proportion at play. The top section, the yoke, takes up exactly 1/4 of the garment, which leaves 3/4 for the rest of the body. That's a 1-to-3 ratio. It perfectly grounds the design and makes sure the whole thing feels totally balanced to the eye.
Of course, the fabric you choose really dictates if that silhouette is gonna succeed or not. Here, they used a soft draping fabric with a nice matte smooth texture. It allows that A-line flare to just fall naturally and gracefully. When you combine that drape with a round neck, those comfortable 3/4 sleeves, and a relaxed knee-length fit, the designer's intent is crystal clear. This isn't some heavy party gown, right? It's highly functional. The target customer here is a young working woman or a college student who needs something comfortable, low maintenance, but still stylish for everyday wear.
So what we literally just did right there was mentally fill out a design analysis worksheet. This is exactly how professionals systematically evaluate clothes in the real world. You list out your evaluation fields: garment type, silhouette, proportion, fabric, target customer, and then you log your analysis for each one. If you practice using a mental table like this on garments you see in magazines, on Instagram, or just out shopping, you'll start training your brain to snap read fashion instantly.
Finally, part 5, pro secrets and common mistakes. Look, knowing the theory is great, for sure, but knowing exactly where things go wrong, that is what separates the novices from the absolute masters. Let's rapid fire through the top mistakes beginners make. First, just saying a garment is good or bad without giving a concrete reason why. Second, and honestly this one is huge, judging a piece entirely by its color. People get so blinded by a beautiful color combo that they completely miss a terrible, unflattering fit. Third, ignoring the silhouette and getting obsessed with tiny surface details. Fourth, just kind of guessing the proportions instead of actually taking a second to look at the ratios. And fifth, totally forgetting who the target customer is and where they're going to wear it. So the crucial point here is that you really need to adopt the mindset of a master. Pro secret number 1, always ask why, never just what. Pro secret number 2, evaluate your silhouette and your proportions first. Only look at the color and the print later, because the shape dictates your entire foundation. And pro secret number 3, think practically. A design isn't just a pretty sketch on an iPad, it's a physical 3D object. Things like proper finishing, clean hemlines, and neat seams, those will absolutely make or break your creative vision out there in the real world.
Well, there you have it. We've covered the core elements, the step-by-step process, and even ran through a complete case study. So I want to leave you with this final challenge. Will you ever look at a garment the exact same way again? The next time you're out and about, don't just admire a cool outfit. Dissect it. Use your new design analysis eye. Because once you master reading the outside of a garment, you'll be totally ready for our next massive step, garment analysis. That's where we literally rip the seams open and look at internal construction. But until then, keep analyzing and keep asking why.